We're good to go. Good morning. Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about a new hot topic. I'm sure all you guys have heard that the appraisal guidelines for Fannie Mae are going through some changes. These changes just started April 1st, and they're taking place for any loans that are being sold in the secondary market to Fannie Mae. Now, this is just, typically conventional loans, not FHA, VA, USDA. All those, aren't really affected, but they kind of are. I'll get to that as we go through this stuff. So what are the changes? The changes are that Fannie Mae is now requiring appraisers to go out and measure the property to this ANSI Z765-2021 standard. This is an American National Standards Institute measuring system. And the key points that we kind of want to pay attention to with this are, if we scroll down here, the measuring components that will affect gross living square footage or area are finished areas must have a ceiling height of at least 7 feet. In a room with sloping ceilings, at least 50% of the finished square footage of the room must have a ceiling height of 7 feet. In no portion of the finished area that has a ceiling height less than 5 feet can be included in the GLA. If a house has a finished area that does not have a ceiling height of 7 feet for 50% of the finished area, for example, some Cape Cods in conformance with ANSI standard, the appraiser may put this area on a separate line in the sales comparison grid with the appropriate market adjustment. The report will be ANSI compliant and also acknowledge the contributing value of the non-GLA square footage. So obviously this is a big deal, definitely here in Pennsylvania, because, we've got a lot of older homes that, in some instances don't have any ceiling heights that are, higher than 7 feet. In addition to that, we have a lot of Cape Cod homes that have knee walls less than 5 feet and, less than 50% square footage in that finished space, less than 7 feet as well. So technically, in these scenarios, that's not going to be counted as gross living area. So I don't profess to know all the answers with this and have all the solutions or workarounds, but I truly think it's a work in progress, even for the lenders and appraisers at this point. This is something that has been brought on relatively quick and fast, and everybody's going through kind of a learning curve together. This was announced right before Christmas of last year, and then obviously again it went into effect April 1st. NAR wrote a letter in February trying to express some of the complaints that we all are probably thinking in our minds right now, and also saying how much of a mess this is going to cause with communication and appraisers systems that they have. With that being the case, I wrote down some of the potential issues that I see with this new standard of measurement. I want to go through these, and then I want to have Guy Fry, he's joining us today. I want him to kind of fact check what I'm going over and maybe give us some insight how lenders and appraisers are kind of handling this change. So starting it off with the potential issues I see, I looked up, and Pennsylvania has the 4th oldest housing stock in the nation. Many of our homes, in this area are essentially going to have 0 above grade gross living area, which is going to make a extremely hard time for appraisers to compare those to other properties that have sold in the past 6-12 months. Obviously, right now it's hard to appraise any property because the market's changing so quickly. But now we have a further wrench in the system, in that those comps in the last 6 months were measured to a completely different standard. So how do you measure, a home that essentially has 0 above grade square footage with one that was completely similar that has X amount of square footage above grade? The reasons they did this were, currently no one has a national standard of measurement. Assessors, appraisers, and realtors together, none of them measure to a certain standard. Typically they say, Fannie Mae kind of starts the trends, and this could be the beginning to a standard of measurement. Another point that I wrote down here is that Fannie Mae is stating that their measurement standard should have 0 effect on market value. But like I just said, it's kind of hard to compare a property that has 0 above grade square footage to, something that is completely similar that has X number of square footage. So their theory is that for non-conforming square footage, it gets added back in to a separate line item in that appraisal as an adjustment. I've heard that a rule of thumb, on appraisals, the less, amount of adjustments an appraiser has to make, the better the comp is. Obviously, with all these adjustments being made, it, stands to question how reliable these comps are. I mean, how do you put a number on what that square footage is worth to this non-conforming square footage? The last thing I wanted to bring up is, taking all this into consideration, does this, put a detriment on conventional offers and competing offer situations? Previously, these conventional offers were, premier next to cash, which is coming out of the woodworks and everybody seems to have these days. But conventional offers were the best of the best. But now, being that they're going to be measured to a different standard, in FHA, VA, USDA, they don't have that standard of measurement as of yet. Does that throw a little bit of hiccup in your multiple offer situations? At this point, I kind of want to open it up to Guy. Guy, is there anything that of importance that I missed? Any fact checking? How are you guys handling this? And what are you guys thinking as lenders?
Well, we sell to Fannie Mae and to Freddie Mac, so I'm already switching all my stuff temporarily over to Freddie Mac. The pricing's the same, everything. So I've done that already in my head. This reminds me, years ago on the mortgage application, they switched from 2 years to 7 years for a while. And they wanted people to go back 7 years for their addresses and what they did for a job and everything. And that kind of blew up. And I'm hoping that this is such I just see a nightmare coming with this, because the underwriters are going to look at the adjustments, and every underwriter is going to look at the adjustment and decide on their own what's best for the institution. So, and how government agencies are, if one does it, the other are going to follow. So I'm sure we're going to see FHA come along, and VA and all that come along with their own interpretation of what they should have. So
sure,
I don't see any good coming out of this. I'm hoping it blows up in their face and they go back to normal. There's some kind of different standard, but this just reminds me of a nightmare coming.
Well, I guess only time will really tell for that one, but it's definitely a learning curve for everybody, and no one has all the answers as of yet. But when you guys are currently ordering your appraisals, are you guys providing any input as to what standard you want it measured to, or are you leaving that kind of up to the appraiser's discretion?
It's brand new right now, Brooks, so we don't know. We haven't, I haven't heard anything as far as any feedback as far as problems or difficulties yet. It's so new.
Okay.
So really, I think I should come back when I start hearing something, which, I'll be more than happy to. But so far, I haven't heard anything.
Okay.
And I'm sure everybody in my company is doing the same thing and flipping everything over to Freddie Mac right now, temporarily, until we figure out what's going on with this.
Okay.
I hate to be like that, but
sure. Anyone here on the call have any conversations yet with their lenders or appraisers doing conventional loans on their deals that can provide any insight to us as to what the new procedures are? Kong, have you heard anything?
I have not, but reading these guidelines, you also have to worry about those finished rooms above garages too, right? A lot of them are not 7 foot, and they have little eaves and stuff like that. So I think I read a different article when this first came out, Brooks, and at the very end of the whole scare, it said that it shouldn't change much in the appraisal and we shouldn't have much to worry about. But, until we actually see it in effect, just don't know what will happen with this. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've watched the stuff on PAR in their articles, and everybody's saying kind of the same thing, that it shouldn't have an effect on the value, but don't have a real good answer on how that's possible.
Or
so
why are we making the change then? If it's not going to affect.
Hey, Brooks.
Yeah, Bill.
Brooks, quick question. I mean, a lot of these homes, some of the older homes that have real high ceilings, they end up putting drop ceilings in. You know what I mean? So is it going to be measured at the actual ceiling height or the drop ceiling height? I mean, if I go buy a house that has 7 foot or less ceilings, do I live there so I don't have any property taxes either? I mean, if it's not considered living space, I mean, you know what I mean? It's a big can of worms. Big can of worms.
It sure is. You brought up a good question. Like, how does that affect your property taxes? Like I mentioned earlier, that there's no standard of measurement throughout assessors, appraisers, realtors. So it seems like Fannie Mae is trying to start the trend here as to what they think everything should be measured to. Not quite sure I agree with picking that standard of measurement, but in any event, we have to deal with it anyway, because it's a standard, and we can gripe about it all we want, but it's going to be hard for us individually to change it. Hopefully NAR and PAR, these guys can provide a good bit of input to them and maybe get this thing reversed, but we'll see. Anybody else out there talk to any appraisers or lenders and have some insight for us?
I did talk to an appraiser. Man, he called me back in. He's a friend of mine. And I bet it was before all this even came out, before we even heard about it. He says, I don't know how they're going to do it. He says, I have no idea how they're going to do it and how they're going to enforce it. It's impossible. And he's been an appraiser for 25 years.
Okay. It is crazy. Guy, on a little bit different note, I heard they're now allowing desktop appraisals across the board, but they require a floor plan of the property. Have you heard of these? Is your company
I haven't
dealing
heard a
with
thing
those at
about
all?
that. Not yet. I have not heard a thing about that.
Apparently, this is for both Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, that they're allowing for first mortgages. they're allowing appraisers to do desktop appraisals where they don't even go to the property. As long as they have a floor plan for the property, they can make, you know, an opinion of value off that, and essentially lend to it. So that's relatively new too. I think that went into effect here in April as well. Uncle Tim, any thoughts? Would you have anything for us on these changes?
I think we just have to learn to live with it. You know, we just went through one where we had a 2,600 square foot house. The tax record says it's a 2,600 square foot house. We're paying taxes on it as a 2,600 square foot house, but it's a 4-way split level home. And 1/3 of the one section of the house is underground, yet we still have a full basement. And the appraiser cut us to 1,700 square feet and compared it to 1,700 square feet homes, when again, we have a 6-bedroom, 3-bath, 2,600 square foot, you know, all brick house. So what are you going to do? There's nothing we can do. We got to learn to live with it. But they've got to learn to adjust a little more heavily for situations like that, I think, because they can't just cut all the values. So
Sure. They were on the one PAR call I was listening to, they were talking about homes down in Philadelphia area, you know, in historic districts, and how those homes used to have, you know, a significant amount of value because of them being historic. And now if you get a conventional loan that's being sold to the secondary market, your home essentially has 0 square footage, which is crazy. But again, they're saying it's not going to affect market value. So they'll be having to make an adjustment for that in some way, shape, or form.
Brooks, I would say if you're going to list a house in any borough, just be careful. Keep this in mind.
Or like you said, new construction with, or newer construction with improvements over the garage, finished space. Like if you're getting ready to list that kind of stuff, do the measurements on your own, get the details and ducks in a row, so that if you have to battle any type of, you know, appraisal issues, you have all that stuff ready to go and you're not fighting it after the fact.
It may be wise too if it's a questionable home and you're just not sure, because we have no experience in how they're going to price these or how they're going to appraise them. Maybe you talk the owner into saying, hey, let's get an appraisal, and if I sell your home, I'll reimburse you for that appraisal out of the commission or whatever. That way you're covered and you're not putting yourself at risk. You know, that, you know, I could just see, you know, this attorneys, you know what I mean? It could get crazy.
Sure. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts they want to share with us here? Kara, what are you guys thinking down there in Chambersburg? Do you have a lot of homes down there that are going to be affected by this?
Brooks, we do, with the older homes that we have, and like Kong said, in the borough. I mean, we do, and even on some of the outlying in the townships. I mean, we do have some that have the lower ceilings, and like Bill mentioned, you know, we have people that back whenever the energy prices were so high previously, they lowered the ceiling height and put in those, you know, lower ceilings. So it'll be interesting. I'll reach out to an appraiser that I know fairly well today and see if I can't see his opinion on it.
Okay. Awesome. Well, you know, if no one else has anything else they want to talk about or bring up question wise, you know, we'll wrap this up, but I will definitely send out all the links and information that I have. I would suggest, you know, making yourself as well versed in this as you possibly can, just knowing all the details. And like I said before, taking the steps if you're listing a home that has ceiling heights that are going to come into effect, do your due diligence beforehand and put your facts and details together. That way you can fight any problem that arises. Alrighty, guys, we'll wrap this one up. I'll push out another topic here later this week. I hope you guys have a great week.